Good morning, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about what are the actions or the right actions to your path and what you need to take here on Rise and Grind with 72 the Architect. So, good morning, everybody. Stay tuned here in just a second as we get prepared. Let's get going. All right. Good morning, everybody. How was everybody doing today? It's Monday. It's May Day, May 1st. That's right. May. It is the 1st of May. We're just around the corner from starting summer. Spring has been here. It's been true to its form: rain, sunshine, or snow for some others. But it's been a different transitional period going on. But, since it's the first day of May and it's the first day of in May, for the Daily Stoic, it talks about right actions. What are the right actions that we're going to be taking and living with? That's right. How do we really make sense of it all? And that's the beauty of all of this. I mean, it's like everyone has an opinion about how to take the right actions, but the Stoics really had interesting points of view of what they could do, so to speak. So we're here to exactly talk about that. And what are those virtues? So virtues, it's kind of like the best way to explain it, it's your behavior and showing that you have good moral standards, or you just have a good rule of acting with people and yourself. And it could mean that you have a good level of goodness, a level of righteousness. You have a good understanding of morality and ethics, and that's really what the virtues are. But it's a little different, or it's more encompassing with what the Stoics believed. They believed in a certain level of discipline, honor, and courage, and they are based in a few principles. Now, the first one is wisdom, the second is justice, the third is courage, and the fourth is moderation or temperance. And those are interesting things, to say the least. And I'm producing live on YouTube, so thank you so much for the supporters who are out there viewing me. I definitely appreciate you. Um, but when I read the Daily Stoic this morning, it came from a philosopher a little older than what I usually read, but Musonius Rufus, in his book Lectures, he was quoted in saying, "For philosophy doesn't consist in outward display, but in taking heed to what is needed and being mindful of it." Now, I think that's really great, to say the least, and to be really specific. Let's see. Oh, Izzy, hey, how you doing? Good to see you on YouTube. But I want to talk a little bit more about things. How do we really choose the right actions? What shapes our decisions to making the right actions? Are we so much on autopilot? We guess, we are impulsive, we think. How do we make things work for our better outcome, right? Now, Ryan Holiday and many Stoics, or Ryan Holiday, a current Stoic, I should say, he wrote his Daily Stoic, the book, and other books like Obstacles the Way, Ego's the Enemy, all that great stuff. He wrote these books to kind of help us shape our mindsets, to look at, is the problem really a problem, or it's just a part of the process? And when he also took upon Ego as the Enemy, he kind of really dove in and talked about it's our own internal compass that really defies the odds, whether we'll continue on the same path in which we've been choosing in life, or whether we'll do something the same, get the same results. But whatever the case may be. But then he wrote on other books like Stillness is the Key. He wrote Courage is Calling, I believe. Excuse me if I get that title wrong, but anyhow. But when he wrote these books and I read them and I listened to them and I took them as study, and I was like, what is this man talking about compared to how I've understood Epictetus, how I've understood Marcus Aurelius, how I understood all these great guys, right? They have all these. But the interesting thing about the quote for today is Ryan goes on in a short paragraph. He says, the monk dresses in his robes, a priest puts on his collar, a banker wears an expensive suit and carries a briefcase, and a Stoic has no uniform and resembles no stereotype. There are no identifiable by looks or by sight or sound, but the only way that recognizes them is by their character. Now, character is one of those interesting things because it's what you're representing. Are you a calm person? Is that in your character? Are you a very reactive person? Is that in your character? Let's define character real quickly here. So let me look up character. Let's see, character correctly in definition. Let's see. It's the mental and moral qualities that are distinctive of an individual. So if you're calm and pleasant, polite, that's a part of your character. There are negative characteristics as well. So how do we get the right actions to shape our character, right? I think the sound is off because I cannot hear you. Carlos, thank you for letting me know that. And you know what? Maybe that I think this will fix it. Hold on. Let's see. Let me take that off, and we'll just have to record. I'll just have to record on my phone. Hopefully, that is a little better. So sorry about that. Sometimes the sound, the connection, um, can be a little off, and especially producing live here on Clapper. So, if you want to check me out on YouTube, which I'm also producing, go to 72 the Architect, and you'll be able to find Rise and Grind with 72 the Architect. And today's shows what are the actions you need to take. Anyways, getting back into the show, thank you so much. I definitely appreciate the heads up because that makes a difference for me, especially in my broadcast. So let's get right back into it. So the Stoics, they wrestled with these ideals. They wrestled with these things, so to speak. And when they did, it was like it was no easy undertaking, to say the least. Not at all, because when you spell out certain things like justice, when you put out what is courage, what is wisdom, and moderation or temperance, as some may say. These are not things that you have to work on them exactly every single day. You will have to work on these things. Now, when I was really looking and diving in deep, there are disciplines within the philosophy, the discipline of desire. Desires lead to wishing on things, or to do, the Italians use or the Latins used amor fati, the love of fate, right? But they also believed in action, impulse to act virtuous to all mankind, or women too, and human flourishing. How do we flourish as people? So that's really an interesting thing. But then there's another one. There's one of logic. Now, logic gets a little twisted because it can be very mathematical. For those of you who've taken logic in college and you took courses to how be able to learn to debate, really. And most attorneys out there, when they go to law school, before they even go to law school, there is a section in the LSAT called logic games. Now, logic is the decider, it is the equator of all. It gives the mathematical value in any of our statements. You have a premise, you have a conclusion, you have, a prepositional question. So, on discipline of assent, as they would call it for the actions, value of your judgments, maintaining the reason and trustworthiness and truthfulness of your decision, which leads on to mindfulness. Now, when we decide about these things and we look at like, hey, these are the things that really make a difference in my life. I brush my teeth every day. I make my bed. I make sure that I present myself in the mirror. These are characteristics and actions that I shape my character, part of my character, to look my best, to not just go outside and look like I'm wearing pajama pants when I need to go to a business meeting, right? But let's get into the action parts. How do we decide the right actions? Not all choices for actions need to take place now. There are things that will press your conscience, drive your impulsiveness, right? Think about that. What drives you to react or think or discern, which is deciding right now. How many of it really say, this is the deal, man. I've got to do something now. Now, there are real life and death situations, granted, but there are also times where things aren't so life and death. They're personally meaningfulness. And I talked last week, or no, the week before, I talked about perspective view and observational view. And the perspective view is when you are putting meaning to things the way that you see them. Observational value means that you're not trying to put the meaning, you're just kind of seeing what things are, shape, sounds, warm, hot, what you identify logically to things. And how do we combine the two? It's not very easy. But taking the right actions and taking those two filters, making them work for you every single day is not no easy thing. We have this constant dilemma since we are growing up as children, when we could actually make conscious decisions about things, when we were the ones deciding what's in within reality, right? What is within reality? What makes me wealthy? How many times have you been pitched, follow my path and I'll lead you to riches, become a millionaire, right? How many times have you come across that? And for a lot of us, we have always. You see it on television. Turn on the television late at night, and I will guarantee you, more than likely, you will see infomercials. You will see things that will tell you, buy this thing, invest in this product, invest in this way, and you will choose the pathway to success. Many people sell pathways to success, but how do they validate it? I was interesting, when I was talking to I've been on Clubhouse, of course, and I've had those interesting discussions. I've had those people really tell me about, "Hey, you've gotta really work with, you have to work with others to get to the next level." What is the next level? And then they'll also tell you not to be satisfied with anything. Keep your desire going. But the Stoics kinda talked a little bit differently about that. If you read Epictetus in Discourses or the select readings of Discourse, he'll tell you that moderation is the key essential leveler of all situations. He'll tell you, and as well as Marcus Aurelius, they'll constantly, both of them will say, you know what? You want to get to riches, master emotions. That's the first one. Master your emotions, right? Seems easy. Does. Or is it? What happens when your family have proposed things that maybe you might be qualified for or unqualified for, or they have an opinion about your dreams? Have you ever come across where someone familiar, whether you be related or friends, they talk to you, oh man, that's crazy. Going to college at your age, what are you thinking? Go to law school, go to dental school, go to med school, all those things. Oh man, you're too old. Tell people your dreams, and more than likely, within the first 10 people you talk to, there will be at least three, minimum three, that will talk you out of it or question you. Maybe even more. That was my experience. The first three people I told, hey, I want to go to law school. I want to become a lawyer. When I told people that, and especially my relatives, they were like, I don't know, Jason, man. You've told some tall tales before. And that's but they didn't know. They just assumed like, oh yeah, becoming an attorney or becoming any kind of professional, just get a good job, get married, have a family, don't work so hard. But see, nowadays, those thoughts, and I look at those people who said that to me, where are they now? No better, a lot worse, and trying to fight for longevity. And, I didn't attempt just going to get educated. I became educated. But see, I became more educated beyond a university, beyond school. I decided in my mind, if I was going to get ahead, I needed to learn to do. That's right. If you're learning anything, it's got to be practical to work into your life. I don't just read books just for the sake of reading books, right? A lot of us do. Some sample books. I mean, I've got plenty of books. I couldn't even get past the 3rd chapter. But what happens when you take books as an instruction, as a discipline to teach you and consciously get you moving, right? What if you take books and it's like, you know what? I read the 4 Agreements and it helped me keep my word a little better. Help me do my best. And I started looking at life with not making expectations, you know, but the being impeccable with my word was probably the most difficult of all the disciplines within that book and that series. But what did I get in return? When I tell someone I'm going to do something and I tell someone, "Hey, I'm followed up," I become in the pathway, the start of the man of my word. It's completed, it's done. The person who's receiving, yeah, he did what he said. But we're in a world where even people who've done what they've said are constantly questioned, belittled. We cancel them because it wasn't to the perfect level, or maybe it was a little bit immature. And getting it the right way, that says a lot about us. You know, getting it right takes time. And the Stoics constantly they preached the pathway to practice and practice for mastery and practice even some more. And that's kind of interesting you ask me, because when I think about it, what do I have to earn for myself before I earn others? I had to struggle for a long time. How many of you have really struggled with people pleasing? They're it's all over. You can't ignore it. And what I find so interesting about people pleasing, it's directly correlated with narcissism, right? And the people that judge narcissism, what I've seen on social media, are ill qualified, not psychiatrists, psychologists, or psychotherapists. They're not even close, but they'll get those coaching degrees, right? Those coaching certificates. I'm certified a narcissist recovery coach. Or they'll make posts of how to handle a narcissist, right? But more or less, when you look and you listen and you watch just enough, you see that it's not so much that they can coach you. They're just expressing their feelings, their hurt, their thirst to share and warn others of what they've gone through. And they rehearse this feeling, this victim mode, and trying to educate people. And it's like, well, wait, how are you making your right decision? If I were to tell you about good moral character, would I really be talking about narcissism? Probably not. So how do we shape good character? How do we shape our integrity? Fulfill your word. Now, James Clear was interviewed, I think he was on Impact Theory, and he was the writer of Atomic Habits, and he basically says no is a decision and yes is an obligation. Interesting, right? Once you say no, poof, it's done. But once you say yes, you're obligated to how long? What are the rules? When is it complete? When does it finish? Right? Did you discuss the terms? And I think that's where we constantly deliberate on the facts, on the truth. Now, how many times have you heard someone says, "What I'm following is the truth"? I find that really interesting. Even a dear friend of mine, I kind of trolled a little bit just to test. I'll give you an example. A close and dear friend of mine, and I love them dearly. They were in a room where they were talking a specific, let's just say, theology. And they described Westerners, I'm from America, and they're from the East, supposedly, depending on how you look at it. They described that Westerners are perverse, and they used an example. They said, well, Westerners are so easy to go shop for women's lingerie. I don't know. I'm a normal guy. I'm a straight guy. Me going into a lingerie shop ain't the most comfortable situation for me. But they said that they used that as a question, as an example of the moral compass of how we live and how we decide that we are immoral. But when I'm prone to question and an idea, and I wasn't really necessarily proud of this because my friend called me and said, "You embarrassed the hell out of me. You embarrassed the fuck out of me." I used the same tactic that they did. And I said, "I'm going to use your own theology again." I didn't tell them I was going to do this, but I used their own theology against them. And what did I say? I said, "Well, according to your theologian, they did this and this and this, and this is why you wear these certain things, and this is why you act." So, and the room backlash that I got was interesting because then they were like, "How dare you offend us?" That was it. That was the key. And none of them caught it. See, it's easy to offend somebody. It's much harder to teach someone. So when I talked to my friend, I listened to completely her where she was coming from. And she's all, now I have to worry much, much more about how I act because I'm associated with you. But I'm like, did you think the same thing when me, the Westerner, your friend, came in? Did you try to stop these people saying, no, you didn't? And I'm not mad at you for it because you have a role in your community to uphold. But choosing the right actions could have said, you know what? My understanding of the West, I don't think it's that clear and I don't think it's that concise. Well, we didn't mean any harm by it. And that was their statement. They basically said, well, we didn't mean it that way, but you performed it that way. And now when I turn it on to you, you get offended. Did you not learn something? And when my friend, I was talking to her and I was just basically saying, I was like, you know what? This is what we ought to think about. Words mean things. When people say things, they land somewhere, even when they're passively listening. But when they're actively listening, when they're trying to find out what you really mean, they are listening with their emotions. And Marcus Aurelius he gives some guidelines. He gives some ideas like, don't be so eager to speak. Speak exactly what you need to. That's the first part of building a good character. Say exactly what you need to when you need to. Don't give words just to fill in the situation, even when you don't know. I would rather tell somebody that I don't know the answer to that than tell someone a partial truth that I observed from some piece of information from wherever, because it puts me in question. So when you look at being impeccable with your word, it's measurable. And that means people can't use things against you so easily, right? So what will be that next thing? If you want to shape a good character and good integrity, you know, take care of yourself. That's right. When people view you outside, whether they've known you all their lives or 5 minutes, the judgment comes from where you keep the consistent pace. So take care of yourself. Me, I shave every day. I would love to grow a beard, but this facial hair does not grow solid enough to do that. That's fine. I keep in line. And so here's the next part. Have low expectations of anything. Do not expect anything. When you have a contractual thing, you have an agreement, you have that yes, so to speak. Yes, I'll show up and have coffee with you at 9 a.m. Fine. That's great. That's awesome. You fulfilled your meeting. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, what comes from the actions and the choices in that meeting doesn't really matter. Well, that's interesting because then we get into reliances. Why do you have a reliance? So when you go from expectations to reliances, it's because what people believe about you, your character. Yeah, that guy, he says what he says, he does what he does, man. He represents it all. Stand up guy. When I tell people, you know what, I I would forward their reputation. That's the next thing. Your actions produce further outcomes of people understanding. Your actions are things that you can say, well, you know what? I can get behind that. And but here's the interesting thing about shaping good character. Don't let people bring up the past to balance you out. That's right. So if you were, let's say you were irresponsible when you're a teenager and someone sees you when they're 30. Oh yeah, I remember that guy. They're so crazy. People change. Or you even hear those passive statements, you know, like what's the most famous one? Once a cheater, always a cheater. Once a liar, always a liar. No, that's not true. And that's where we can really grasp on a lot of things. When we look at, we decide, take time to decide. Maybe that person was upset. Maybe where they're emotionally at is not going to be where they're going to be at in a year from now. People do grow up. People do get better or they get worse. Either way, but shaping your character, what makes a great shaping actions, what are the actions you need to commit to? And that means be honest with yourself. You don't have to worry about everyone else's honesty. Just worry about your honesty alone. Right? Being honest with yourself, being able to look in the mirror is really key and essential. So when we look at all these things, that's where the trust begins. Because if someone calls me a jackass, right? Well, if I don't agree about it and I don't respond to it, who are they? They move on. That's their opinion. They may be in an emotional space not to make a decision, right? But I read something even more sinister in the Daily Laws today. And for May 1st, he kind of talks about the equalizer of them all. He talks about how everyone, Robert Greene, he talks about everyone as a player in the game of life, right? He quotes Lord Chesterfield. He says, courts are unquestionably the seats of politeness and good breeding. Were they not so, they would be the seats of slaughter and desolation. Those who now smile upon and embrace would affront and stab each other in manners that did not interpose. Now, that sounds kind of verbose and old English, and it kind of is. But Robert goes on to say, you can recognize and suppose non players by the way that they flaunt their moral qualities and their piety, their exquisite sense of justice. But since all of us are hung for power and almost all our actions aimed at gaining it, the non players are merely throwing dust in your eyes and distracting us from their power plays. If you observe them closely, you will see, in fact, they are often the ones most skillful, indirect in manipulation, even if someone then practices unconsciousness or unconsciously, and they greatly resent any publicizing of their tactics their every day. So the daily law says the world is like a giant scheme of court. We are all trapped inside. There are no opting out of the game. Everyone is playing. And so when you're shaping your good character and your dignity, your integrity, making good choices and making good actions, everyone is playing some sort of game, even when they say they're not. It's a part of our human DNA. The ego is essentially part of our humanness. And but we expect a certain level to do right, to be right, right? So that's really something that I took away from both the readings, the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and the Daily Laws. I accept people for where they're at and not expect them where they should be. And the best way I can tell you is live a life that is afforded to you in the best way possible by appreciating what you already have. When you already understand what you have and how you act, you know what? I don't need to respond to every situation. Or, you know what? I don't need to buy a brand new car to make me feel better. How many times have you bought a car and you're just like, the magic of it or the lust wears off unless someone says something? Like the other day, there was a Aston Martin. I was in downtown Concord. No, not Concord, Martinez, California, and I was at the courthouse, and I saw, an Aston Martin, then I saw a Jaguar, and I saw the drivers both, and I'm like, "Beautiful cars, man. Awesome, beautiful sight." I appreciated the moment of me and my admiration. One guy smiled, said, "Thank you very much. I appreciate that." The other guy got in his car, poof, took off. I didn't take no offense to it, but I could have said, "Well, what an asshole." He could have said thank you too. But see, that's not me putting expectations out there to have to explain to people that that's morally right. I let it go. It's not essential to keep it, to hold it. So if you're going to start making actions, right, have no expectations of them. Make actions only according to what you can fulfill. If you want to shape your character, keep your word by saying less. See, by saying less and responding less, no one can hold you to too much. And sometimes not saying, people can assume all they want till they prove. But it's like, nah, I didn't commit to that, man. So that's really the Daily Stoic today. Wednesday. Oh, I didn't even give you the question of the day. Do my actions and my mind match my philosophy? Ooh, hoo, 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 hoo. Now, Wednesday, we're going to talk about your actions. So if you want to come back on between 7 and 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, um, Wednesday, we're going to talk about, are you showing or telling? That's the theme of it. Are you showing or telling? Are you, can you prove it? Or just talk about it. So we're going to talk about, shaping your actions to be the best for you by, how do you look at your actions representing what you've said or not said. So anyhow, that's all the time that I have for Rise and Grind. I definitely appreciate all the viewers, subscribers. Definitely love it here on Clapper. Appreciate the gifts. I'm going to be on here Monday, Wednesday, Friday, between 7 and 8 a.m. making content for you. And also, this is available on YouTube. So if you could subscribe and let me know what your thoughts are. I definitely appreciate it. So we're going to exit on out, and hope you all have a great day. Take care, everybody.